All right, let's jump right in. We often get caught up thinking that it's the technical stuff, the code, the engineering, that makes or breaks a project. But honestly, the real battlefield is the people, the human landscape. So today, we're going to master stakeholder identification. And I don't mean just making a checklist, I mean treating it like the absolute survival skill it is for any project leader.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll lay the groundwork, the why this matters so much. Then we'll get into the how with a practical toolkit. After that, we'll see it all in action with a real-world example, touch on some more advanced ideas, and then wrap it all up with the key principles you've absolutely got to remember.
All right, section 1, the foundation of identification. Let's really get into why this isn't just a nice to have, it's the absolute non-negotiable first step for any project that's going to succeed. So, this is where we need to shift our thinking. A lot of people see this as just, admin work, paperwork, but it's not. This is your foundation for project survival. It's your first line of defense against scope creep and all that chaos. I mean, if you get this part wrong, you're not really managing a project anymore, are you? You're just constantly reacting, putting out one fire after another. Okay, and here's the classic definition, but with a twist that trips up so many projects. A stakeholder is anyone who can affect, be affected by, or, and this is the big one, perceives they are affected by the project. That last part is so crucial. Why? Because on your project, their perception is your reality. It doesn't matter if you think they're wrong. So what we're really doing here is mapping out the entire human risk of the project. Okay, so we've nailed down the why. Now let's get practical. Section 2 is all about the identification toolkit. We're moving on to the how, the actual structured methods you can use to find all these people. So the first way we slice this up is really simple but super powerful. Internal versus external. Let's start with internal. These are the folks inside your company's walls, right? Your team, your sponsor, other managers. You usually have some kind of formal relationship with them, all based on the org chart and how your company is structured. And then, of course, you have the other side of that coin, external stakeholders. This is a whole different ballgame. Your job title, your authority, it means absolutely nothing out here. You can't tell a government regulator what to do. You can't command your customers. With this group, it's all about influence, negotiation, and building relationships. It's a totally different skill set. So the big question is, how do we actually find all these people? Well, the key is not to guess. We need a structured approach. You can kick things off with a big brainstorming session to just get all the names you can think of on a whiteboard, but then you get more methodical. You use things like questionnaires and surveys to reach those broader groups, like your end users, who might not be in the room. The whole point is to move away from just a gut feeling and towards a real structured discovery process. And we don't stop there. Next, you can use benchmarking. Look at similar projects from the past. Who was involved? What lessons were learned? Then there's document analysis. I know, it sounds dry, but you've got to dig into the project charter, the contracts, the business case. All the clues are in there. When you put all this together, you don't end up with a list of guesses. You have a proper data-driven inventory of your stakeholders. All right, theory is one thing, but let's see how this works in the real world. For our next section, we're going to put this toolkit to the test with a classic scenario. Imagine we're building a huge high-rise tower right in the middle of a busy city. So on the surface, you might think, okay, easy. I've got my client, my contractor, and my team. But that's just scratching the surface. A pro knows to look deeper. Just think about the government layer alone. It's not just one building permit office. You've got the fire department with all their safety codes. You have the environmental agency. Heck, you've even got the transit authority because you know your construction is going to mess with traffic. And the web just keeps getting bigger, doesn't it? You've got the community layer, local business owners whose storefronts are going to be blocked, the neighborhood association, maybe even some environmental activists. And don't forget your own internal teams, legal, finance, health and safety. See what's happening? The real insight here is that you're not just mapping people. You're mapping all the potential sources of permission and all the sources of resistance. Okay, so now that we've seen it in practice, let's take things up a level. This next section is all about mastering the process. This is where you really separate the good project managers from the great ones. It's all about seeing those hidden dynamics and knowing the common traps to avoid. Now this is a concept that can literally save your project. It's the idea of the shadow stakeholder. This is that person who has no formal title on your project. They're not on the org chart, but they have the CEO's ear. Or maybe they're the senior engineer that everyone respects and listens to.
Their power is invisible, but it is very, very real. And that's what makes them so dangerous. You can't see them coming through the formal channels. Your job is to find them before they find you.
And look, just getting a list of names is not enough. You have to understand their goals, because often they're not aligned. Take this example. Your client wants the building done fast to start making money, but the city council wants you to limit construction hours to keep the neighborhood happy. Those two goals are in direct opposition. Part of your job during identification is to spot that conflict early. It's like you're mapping the political gravity of your project before it starts pulling everything apart. Okay, for anyone studying for the PMP, listen up. This is a classic exam trap, but it's also just great real-world advice. The myth is that you identify stakeholders once at the beginning of the project and you're done. No way. The PMP logic, and the correct logic, is that identification is continuous. People join, people leave, projects change. So if a new stakeholder pops up, what's the very first thing you do? You officially identify them and add them to your register. Always.
And that leads us right into the second big trap, mixing up identification with analysis. The professional discipline process is simple. Step 1, you find a new person who's impacted. Step 2, you add their name to the stakeholder register. That's it. That's identification. You don't start analyzing their power, their influence, their interest. Not yet. That comes later, in a totally separate step. First you list, then you analyze.
So you might be thinking, wow, this is a lot of work, and it is. But here's the payoff. It drives your entire engagement strategy. This work tells you how to spend your most valuable resource, your time. You can't give everyone the same level of attention. It's just not possible. So based on this work, you decide who needs a formal one-on-one meeting, who can we bring into a workshop, and who just needs to be kept in the loop with a newsletter. It's all about making smart inclusion decisions. Exactly. This identification work directly feeds into your action plan. It tells you if you need formal or informal communication. It helps you spot potential conflicts and engage those people early, proactively. It's all about strategic time investment to prevent fires later. Ultimately, what you're trying to achieve is what some people call a social license to operate. It's that unspoken permission from everyone around you that lets your project move forward without constant friction. All right, we have covered a ton of ground, from the absolute basics all the way up to some pretty advanced stuff. So before we wrap up, let's do a quick final review to really lock in the key principles you need to walk away with. Okay, let's hit the first 3 core principles. Number 1, identification is continuous. It's not a one-and-done task. Number 2, the stakeholder register is your single source of truth. It's the key output here. And number 3, always, always look beyond the org chart. And here's the rest. Principle 4, use multiple techniques to find people, don't just rely on one. 5, actively hunt for those informal influencers, those shadow stakeholders. 6, categorizing your stakeholders is what drives your strategy later on. And last but not least, number 7, perception is reality. If someone believes they are impacted by your project, then they are a stakeholder. Full stop. So there you have it. You now have the foundational knowledge and the toolkit to build that comprehensive list of every single person in your project's universe. And that is a huge accomplishment. But as we've said, finding them is really only the beginning. Because now you have the list. But the really big question is, now what? Who on that list has the power to make your project a success? And more importantly, who has the power to stop it cold? That's what we'll dive into next time when we tackle stakeholder analysis.